Hi, everyone. John Michael Coppola here, and welcome to the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast, where we chat with the actors, directors, choreographers, designers, producers, music directors, lyricists, playwrights, and all the artists who make the Chicago area theaters come alive. We're so excited to have you here with us today. But before we get started, we just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues who you think would appreciate the conversations we're having. We'd be so grateful for your support in this way so we can continue to bring these stories for years to come. Thanks again for being here, and now, curtain up on today's episode. On today's episode, we are joined by company members from Fat Theater Project's production of Kassandra at the Top of the World. Eileen Tull is a Chicago-based storyteller, theater maker, poet, educator, solo show performer, and founding artistic director of Fat Theater Project. She has performed throughout the country from San Francisco to New York City, including the New Seeds Festival, United Solo, Dallas Chicago Festival, and Fringe Festivals in Chicago, Cincinnati, Minnesota, and San Francisco. Her work has been seen all over Chicago in bookstores, art galleries, bars, old mansions, other non-traditional spaces, and sometimes even in theaters. Recent directing credits include Household Spirits, Steps, No Exit, Happy Days, SpongeBob Squarepants the Musical, and Funny Like an Abortion. She is a drama instructor with the Chicago Park District, where she has taught creative classes to folks of all ages for over 10 years. She is a drama instructor with the Chicago Park District, where she has taught creative classes to folks of all ages for over 10 years. In 2022, she self-published her first poetry collection, 33 Poems About Peanut Butter. Eileen graduated from Loyola University of Chicago with a bachelor's degree in theater, and this June will graduate with her MFA in directing playwriting from Randolph College. Maya Moreau received her BFA in musical theater from Northern Michigan University in May of 2025 and is a proud member of Gwydion Theater Company. She moved to Chicago just in October 25 to pursue acting and is beyond thrilled to be making her Chicago debut as the title role in Kassandra at the Top of the World. A committed activist, Maya is passionate about using her artistic practice in order to support feminism and climate injustice initiatives. Kassandra at the Top of the World is running now through April 18th at Burger Park Coach House Theater at 6205 North Sheridan Road in Chicago. All performances are at 7 p.m. Wednesdays through Saturdays, and for tickets, please visit the link in our show notes. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Eileen Tull and Maya Moreau. Now let's go to the top of the show. Hi, Maya. Hi, Eileen. How are you both today?
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Amazing. Thanks, both of you, joining me here on the podcast. So we have a little tradition here. We like to ask our guests at the very top of each show to please tell our listeners a little bit about your background and training, and most importantly, what your first theater experience was. So we'll go alphabetically. Eileen, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. First theater experience that I remember is that my dad taught at a high school. And so we would always go over to the high school and do things and whatever. And I remember seeing Fiddler on the Roof for the first time, like that being my first sort of theater experience. And I mean, it was a high school performance of Fiddler on the Roof, but in my memory, it was like the most Broadway caliber kind of show I've ever seen. I was maybe like 6 or 7.
Okay.
And yeah, I just remember I remember kind of looking at all of the background actors and just seeing like, oh, everybody's doing something. Like everybody's living in this world. And I particularly was like, oh, Yenta the Matchmaker, I could do that. So there was a big like, I could do that. So yeah, that's like my first exposure to theater. And then I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I came here to Chicago to study theater at Loyola. And I've stuck around for the most part. I did a little sojourn over to the Bay Area for a little bit and came back. And now I am in grad school for directing and playwriting, getting my MFA, and this project that we may talk about today is my thesis project.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So,
yes.
Yeah, I've trained in a lot of different areas of theater, but that's kind of the origin story.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And yes, we will talk about that project today. That is one of the main focus of our podcast when we get into it a little later. And so now, Maya, you're up.
Yes. My first experience with
theater, honestly, I don't think I was super exposed to it as a young child. I would put on talent shows for my family and stuff, and then I did my first high school show when I was in 3rd grade, and we were doing The King and I, and there are a bunch of, like, kids, we had, like, an ensemble of kids in, like, the public school area who were just saying no lines and dancing on stage and having fun. So, yeah, I started when I was in 3rd grade, and then I loved it so much when I was there because of, like, the community, and I was like, "Oh, I'm on stage." So then I just continued on, through middle school and high school and college, and so then I started training, and I wanna say I lived in, uh, Dearborn, Michigan, which is, like, Metro Detroit area, and that's where I did all of grade
Uh-huh.
school, and then I went to up to Northern Michigan University, up in the UP of Michigan, and that's where I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in musical theater. Um, and there I got training, and I was also a part of, what used to be called the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. It's a mouthful. And now it is the American College Theater Festival. And, and then after that, I spent this past summer teaching music, theater, and dance in Wisconsin. And then I was like, I'm gonna mosey on down to Chicago and pursue acting here. So here I am.
Fantastic. Now, was there something about Chicago that you were particularly drawn to that made you want to come here as opposed to going to New York?
Yes, yes. I feel like New York is really hyped up to young actors in college,
Hmm.
and I have never been one to follow what everybody's going to do. And also, is there something that felt off about New York to me? I don't know. I was just like, I think Chicago feels right, and I was originally planning on going to New York when I lived in Wisconsin. I was like, yeah, I guess that's the thing. I guess when I'm gonna do that. And then, like, I was just getting these random signs of, like, Chicago, and I was like, I don't know, it was, like, showing up in a lot of media I was consuming, and in different I was meeting people from Chicago when I was in Wisconsin, and everybody was like, "Don't move to New York, come to Chicago." And then I was like, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to." And so in August, I decided I was going to move to Chicago, and I got here in October.
You know, I have to say, some of the thinking sometimes about moving to Chicago as opposed to New York is that there are a lot of opportunities here. There are a lot of things that come here to seek artists to go elsewhere. And New York is a much bigger pond, and you'd be a much smaller fish. That's not to say Chicago is not a wealth of talent or not a big enough pond, but it's a healthy pond with a healthy talent pool with a healthy amount of opportunities here. So I
Yeah.
think you made the right decision. And obviously you're playing the title character in Eileen's play. So you didn't do too badly. You made the right
Yeah.
decision, I'd say.
Thank you. I think so too.
Eileen, remind me, you said you came here because of school?
Yes. So I in a uh, uh a long time ago, not so long ago, but definitely like a sizable amount of time ago. But the thing I do think about Chicago is like Chicago wants to put you to work. This community wants people to work. It wants to meet new people. It wants, like the ecosystem, like we want people, and I think New York, it's not that they don't want people, but there's a little bit of exclusivity that I think New York prides itself on of like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And Chicago's like, do you want to come over? Like, it'll be good.
Yeah. It's like the welcoming kid in the playground. Come play with us. That's a really good way of thinking about it, because I had never thought about it in that context. You both have gone to school for theater. You've had a lot of people you worked with training. So I'm curious if there are any specific people in your life that were the most influential. Maya, let's hop back over to you.
Yeah. So I think mostly it started when I was a kid with like my dad. He was a chef, but also he used to play the guitar for me every night. And my grandparents always would encourage me to create music. They had a piano, and we would just play. And so art was like a big part. And music was a big part of my life when growing up. And then as I got older, none of my family has any sort of relevancy in this field. They don't really know what I'm doing. But they've always been supportive. And so after that, it really who became an inspiration to me were like my teachers. my
Mhm.
directors, like my teachers of theater, my music teachers, my directors, my professors in college. Like it feels like the passion that they had for this craft radiated onto me. And I
Mm.
am like forever eternally grateful for that, because with every learning experience I had, every class I had taken, it felt as if I grew a deeper understanding, along with like a deeper sort of love for creating. And deciding to go into this field was really like right after I got out of high school, and I didn't know I wanted to go into theater. And I had all of this
Mhm.
encouragement and support from like my teachers that like I could do this. I can do this, and that I should. And that inspired me to continue, and everybody else after that. So, thank you to everyone.
That's
Yeah.
great. And people just giving you that verbal encouragement and that verbal, I don't want to say permission, but it means a lot. I mean, when I was in high school, this is kind of a funny story. When I was in high school, I did a production of Bye Bye Birdie. It was at a theater that I did shows with. My sisters did shows when they were in high school. It was actually a Catholic high school across town from where I attended high school. And the year that we did Bye Bye Birdie, they decided to invite alumni from the program to play the adults in the show. And then
Um,
the ones that were of kids' age played the teenagers. Well, even though I was in the high school camp of kids, I played Conrad Birdie. Well, it just so happens that Cheetah Rivera's niece was in the ensemble. She went to this high school and she was in the show. And Cheetah Rivera came to our closing night performance. Now, that was super nerve wracking. And for those of you who know about Birdie, there's that big song, Honestly Sincere. And I was choreographed to go into the audience and sing to the audience. And I turned around and she's sitting right on the aisle wearing a sparkly baseball cap. And all of a sudden, the spotlight is spilling over onto me and Cheetah Rivera. And I totally changed course, went the other direction because I was like, oh, no, I can't do that. Anyway, that's all to say, after the show, we had meet and greet with her, took pictures. And she said to me, I have to tell you, you were really, really wonderful. And I hope that you consider going into this as a profession because I think you do really well. And that always had stuck with me. I'm like, okay, great. I mean, wise words from Cheetah Rivera. And as the years went on, I went to community college because I had a twin brother, and it was more economical for my dad to send me and my brother to community college, and then maybe go to other university from there. But after community college, I started auditioning and started working. My training ground was mostly community theater as I grew up, and so but that always stuck with me that I had gotten that little bit of acknowledgement from this Broadway legend. And then finally, about 8 years ago, she was touring through Chicago here with Seth Rudetsky doing her concert. And I bought a ticket. And then that I bought a meet and greet ticket afterwards. And I went up to her and I said, I don't know if you'll remember this. Years ago, I told her the whole story and I just said, I want to thank you for your encouraging words, because not only did I find a profession that I loved and that I really excelled at, I met my wife doing it. I have a son now who's in high school. I have this wonderful life that moved us to Chicago. And if I hadn't gotten your encouragement, I don't know that I ever would have seriously taken the leap. And this, I grew up in an artistic household. My family would have been very encouraging of it as well. But, when you meet somebody who is of authority, be that a teacher or a professional who's made who's a celebrity of that level, and you get those words of encouragement, they really do mean a lot. So
yeah.
that's my little anecdote about a similar story. So I'm glad that there are teachers out there who can give encouraging words to people who are learning this craft, and not all teachers are toxic or have other experiences. Eileen, I know you had an experience, which we're going to get to in a little bit, which is sort of was the basis of you forming your company as well. But before we get to that, I'd like to know if there were any influential people in your life that made a positive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself am a teacher, a theater teacher. So I've been doing that for about 7 or 8 years. And like that is so important to me, to be able to introduce theater to young people, or to, I mean, I think it is about giving permission, of being like, yes, art is a thing to pursue. It is not necessarily something that is in the background. Like, it is okay to want to prioritize this and to believe in yourself. Um, And I would say I've been so lucky to have a lot of really encouraging people in my life. But I want to highlight my Latin teachers from high school who, because this play particularly deals with mythology, and I was super into Latin in high school. It's okay.
Amazing.
Don't get intimidated by how cool I was. Very cool vibes coming over here. So I was super into Latin club, super into going to Latin convention, on both the state and national level. Again, just like the coolest
Amazing.
kid. But my two Latin teachers, Melissa Burgess and Sherwin Little, they were both so like they just created this community and environment for some of the like weirdos, for some of the like, I don't know that we were losers, but we were certainly wasn't cool to be like super into Latin club. And I wasn't academically like the best at Latin, but I just like loved it and had a passion for the mythology, the storytelling. And so they just sort of opened their arms to everybody and kind of let us in. Um, and part of the Latin club convention stuff was like you can go make projects. So you take tests and it's like academically, if you are smart, you get prizes, but also you can write skits, you can do monologues, you can, there's lots of different ways to uh, express yourself in the classics. So I actually wrote a skit uh, for competition about Cassandra, um, as sort of like a goth, like, yeah, I had like a really bad breakup and like no one believed me. And I definitely played Cassandra, like, and I had a black toga on and like Hot Topic bracelets. Um, and, they just like, I wasn't going to pursue a career in the classics, but these two people were so encouraging of me. I mean, I remember they gave like, they gave me a gift of like, a book about Chicago and Chicago artists. And like, they just really cared about us as kids and treated us like people. And so I really owe a lot to their it wasn't friendship because it was, like, the proper channels of, hierarchy, but, like,
Yeah.
them accepting me who I was as a person, and as sort of, like, a messy weirdo teen, and then also just believing that I could do what I said I wanted to do. So I just
Hmm.
really always feel grateful to them and kind of model how the way that I teach after the way that they raised us.
So I'm curious, as a teacher, what type of audition advice do you give your students? If you had to give them one golden piece of audition advice, what would that be?
It's so hard. I hate auditioning. I don't do a ton of performing, and part of it is
Okay.
because I hate auditioning, um, and I think because I get really nervous. I get so in my head about it, and so, like, the best
Yeah.
advice that I need to take myself is we're really looking for the person. We wanna see who you are. Like, yes, we wanna
Hmm.
see what you can do and, like, the acting part of it, but we wanna see a person come in the room. We wanna see, like, does this feel like a person who is gonna be fun to work with and is going to, like, show up on time and, have, like, banter conversation, uh, rather than the way I would walk into auditions, which is like, "Here's a monologue from Neil Simon's Star Spangled Girl," and, like, there's just not a lot there. So I think it's about, like, you bring yourself, be yourself, and then show what you can do, and then you walk out and you don't take it personally because
Hmm.
it is I mean, so many auditions I've sat on the other side of the table for, there's hundreds of great people, and there's so many different combinations that you could cast from. So it
Hmm.
it often is not I mean, it's like 99.9% of the time, it's not about you. It's about these 10 other factors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like trying to make auditioning fun, trying to make auditioning a chance for you to act rather than like Judgment Day, like execution style, like,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
yeah. And again, just trying to bring yourself into it.
Great advice. Thanks for sharing that. We appreciate it so much. Now, you've grown up doing theater, trained in theater. I'm sure you've seen a lot of theater. I'd like to know what some of your most memorable theater experiences have been, either as a participant or as an audience member. And Maya, why don't we hop back over to you?
Some of my most memorable theater experience in being on stage has been times when I'm able to have my opinion of a character be heard and listened to and understood. And so it's probably gonna end up being this show that we're doing actually. But
Fantastic.
but like outside of that, I was doing a production of Salome, and that was some of like the best design choices I had seen made in a very long time. I did Salome in college, and I played Salome, and they had these wonderful costumes for me that were like malleable, and I was like taking stuff out of my costume. It was really interesting. And it was my first show I ever did with such heavy text, and I really made it a goal of mine to uh, communicate to the audience this like heightened text can be brought down to life so that everybody can understand. And that I think was my first ever like sophomore year of college. That was my first time ever doing that. I had never done Shakespeare before or any classical text, but it came
Yeah.
very naturally to me. And so I discovered my love for that. I hope the audience understood, but it took so much time to figure out how I could communicate and connect with the audience with this text.
Yeah.
And that I think also inspired my love for text. That show did. So yeah. And also I died at the end and I got thrown up in the air. It was really cool. That was my most memorable experiences.
How about you, Eileen?
Yeah, I really love site-specific theater. I love either taking or going into a space that like isn't made for theater, and then suddenly it is. So shows that I've done that I've loved being a part of is in San Francisco. I was I stage managed the Odyssey on Angel Island, where we like
wow.
we're on, so Angel Island's the island that's not Alcatraz in the middle of the bay. And so the audience would get on the boat, come into the island, start out on the dock, and then we'd have like Penelope talking, and then the audience would walk around the island to different scenes that we would set up, and I'd be like driving a truck and like actors hiding in the back of a truck and driving them from place to place. And it was a
Wow.
6-hour show set.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Is that includes the transport of the audience, or does that mean just the production was 6 hours?
So the audience walked most of the way, and then we drove them for the last like 2 miles. But yeah, it
Wow.
was a whole day experience. We fed the audience, like you cover most of the island.
Wow.
Hermes showed up on a golden speedboat. Gods were like up on the tall mountains. There was a obstacle course, so it was like wild. And it was
Wow.
using all of these sites that were on the island. So like the old hospital, the chapel, all these different places. So yeah, we players in San Francisco, that's their ethos. They do site specific theater out there. It's incredible. And
I can't imagine sorry to interrupt. I can't imagine what type of permit like and approval you need to overtake an entire island for a show. That boggles my mind.
Yeah, they had built a strong relationship with the state park system. So they had done Hamlet on Alcatraz the year before. So by the time we got to the Odyssey, they had a relationship. But yeah, I had to fill out paperwork so that I was technically a state park volunteer, working with them. But yeah, we like lived on the island. We camped out on the island for weekends at a time. yeah, it was the most incredible experience, and again is definitely inspired so much of that was in 2012. So like definitely made its way into so much of the work that I have done, since
Yeah.
then. Um, but yeah,
Wow. That sounds
I
like an incredible experience.
absolutely. And like like I said, I love site specific theater. I want to shout out Snails on a Bike, which is a local Chicago company that did Eurydice on a dock by the river, and had Eurydice like kayaking, over, and they do incredible work. And I love, yeah. Young Crones have done some site specific. Yeah. Just anybody that's doing like that kind of creative space making, I love being inspired by.
I'll have to look up Snails on a Bike. I'd never heard of them before
Yeah, they're
until just now.
lovely.
Thanks for bringing them to my attention. I'll have to Google them when we wrap up. So now, speaking of theater companies, I do want to talk about Fat Theater Company, which is the company you started, with the mission to, quote, tell stories by, about, for, and with fat people, and to put a finer point onto why, sadly, amplifying these stories is necessary. Would you mind sharing with our listeners the experience you had in your acting class? And the story I'm talking about is the one that opened the American Theater article that you were part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't necessarily have a lot of people share stories about how they were directly told, like, you got to stop acting until you lose 30 pounds. I never had that
Right.
experience, but I also didn't get cast a lot. So I sort of was like, oh, are these things related? But yeah, we were in a class like talking about auditioning, and everybody had to kind of come in wearing their audition clothes. And like
Yeah.
the most beautiful girl in the class, like the person that I was like, oh, well, that's like a beautiful actress kind of looking person, was standing and she was straight sized as well. Like she, was not was not like fat in the way of the way that we define these things. And the professor, who I did love very dearly, said, like, if you lose, I can't remember what number he said, but if you lose some weight, like, you really could make it. You really could. You really have a career. And she really she took it on the chin. She went, okay. And like when I talked to her about it later, she was like, yeah, that was weird. And I was like, oh, I would have like walked into the lake if that were me. But um, it was such a like casual thing to say. It didn't have a moment of, I mean, this was, 20 years ago. So it didn't necessarily
Yeah.
have a like reaction of, oh, that was inappropriate. It was just more like, oh no, I think he's right. Like, and then if she should be
Mm.
losing weight because she's smaller than me and she's beautiful and she's whatever, what does that say about me? And he didn't say that to me. So is it like I'm not even worth like commenting? It's like, oh, I'm so far
Mm.
gone or so not considered. So, and all of that stuff too is we've come a long way in 20 years of like the way we talk about bodies and inclusivity, but for everyone who is my age, like that, I think that still lives in us. Like, and
Sure.
people of generations further back, things are getting better, but it's really hard to shake those uh things that are said about us, whether they're said in an audition room, whether they're said by our parents, whether they're said by our friends. And for me, I think the discovery of the last few years has been, okay, so what if I am fat? Okay, if that's true, what is the big deal? And does that
Hmm.
stop me from having opportunity? And I think it's like taking the idea that calling someone fat is not necessarily this horrible big insult, as long as you're like, being fat's okay. Like, you have to kind of get to a place of like, fatness, having more weight on your body is not a sin, is not a detriment. And
Hmm.
therefore, like saying, oh, I have a fat body is not like people being like, no, you don't. You're still beautiful. You can still do. I'm like, well, yeah. And I'm going to do it fat. Like everything I do during the day, I do it as a fat person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's complicated because I think there are things about being on stage where you're looking at someone's body, and an actor's body is one of their tools. It's one of the first things that the audience can see and interact with. And so like it's been a lot of trying to figure out when do we tell stories about bodies and fatness, and like this is a story
Mm-hmm.
about someone being fat and what that's like. And then also, when are we just telling a story and we have fat bodies, we have a diverse lineup of bodies, and their thinness, fatness, mediumness doesn't even come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often fatness is like, it's actually not a huge factor in my life. Like when I go to the grocery store, when I go to work, when I get on the bus, like when I'm doing my laundry, I am fat, but it's not like fat woman does laundry, it's just like person doing laundry.
Right.
So it actually
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
necessarily a factor until someone brings it up as a factor. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So all of that, there's like so many different feelings, and I kind of got to a point about 2.5 years ago where I was like, is this something that people would want to like talk about in theater? And there have
Mm-hmm.
definitely been companies here in Chicago and in different places that address this. Um, some of the groups I worked with in Chicago, uh, people had moved on or had moved away. So I was like feeling a lack of that organization. And I was sort of
Yeah.
started that theater project just as like a little, like, I don't know, maybe people might care. And it got such a response immediately that I was like, oh no, I think I'm starting a theater company. Like, oops, people really are interested.
I applaud you because you're taking a taboo subject, putting it front and center, and not apologizing for it. And I when I read that article that I think you put it in your either in your intake form or maybe it's linked in your Instagram profile. But when I read it, my jaw just dropped. And then when I read basically the article starts off by telling me your experience in college. I just again I go back to our earlier conversation of there are those teachers out there that just lay in these toxic one-liners that stick with us all these years later, that make these impressions, and it's such a psyche killer, that just it really just it's ingrained in there, and it causes people so much harm for so many years. So
Yeah.
I really do applaud you for taking the subject and holding it up to people and saying, yes, we exist and we're proud of who we are. I want to applaud you and I want to thank you for doing that, because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
are benefiting from your work.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to talk about Cassandra at the Top of the World, because you did mention that it was your thesis project. You wrote it and directed it. I want to know, besides it being your thesis project, why you chose this play now. Like, how does this play fit into today's landscape?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all in all, the lifespan of this play has been pretty compressed, pretty fast.
Okay.
I kind of came up with the idea last January, so January of 2025, and then like performances in April. So like in terms of writing and producing and rehearsing a play, like it's a fast sort of lifespan. Um,
Yeah.
so I was in a workshop in my MFA program, and my playwriting teacher, Jenna Hoban, was talking about solo shows, and I do a lot of solo shows, and she was talking about how the structure of a solo show can be like a spine, and that like different pieces are the vertebrae and kind of make up like what is the spine of your story. And
Okay.
most of my solo work has been autobiographical. And so it comes from my life. It comes from me wanting to express something that happened to me or feelings I'm having. And I was like, I wonder if I can write a solo show that stems from an issue. Like, can I write starting from a social issue? And I had this like very quick conversation with myself where I was like, what's a social issue I care about? Climate change and climate disaster is like one that I have a really hard time moving through the world, just not being overwhelmed by it.
Agreed.
And so it was like, okay, if I'm going to start with climate change, what's the thing that bothers me most about climate change is that we know the answers, but like for some reason we can't get it together. People don't believe scientists. Oh, not being believed. Kassandra. Okay, Kassandra. Like it just all sort of fell in very quickly. And I started in that workshop, started writing the first scene of the play, where Kassandra wakes up having known the end of the world was coming and was like, I'm not going to do anything about it this time. And everybody else dies. And that's like the first 5 seconds of our play. um,
Curtain.
Yep.
Just kidding.
Just starting at, very, very nice note. But it was like, okay, if that's how it shapes up for her this time. And then the play evolved from a solo show into a multi-character play, and evolved. I think the climate change theme is definitely still there, is still a part of it. We're working with a few organizations to sort of highlight it and doing like pre-show displays and talkbacks. But it evolved more into a play about speaking truth to power and taking the power back from institutions and putting it back into ourselves and communities. And I think that is that's about climate change. That's about, domestic violence, sexual assault. That's about unions. That's about housing. Like there's all these different kind of things that you can overlay onto that larger theme. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, bravo for once again, bringing this subject to light, because I'm with you. I go to Costco. I love Costco as a company. But when I see people with their cases and cases and cases of bottled water, my soul literally dies every time I see it. I'm like, well, why are we doing this? You could just put a filter in your house, probably save a lot more money and save Mother Earth. Please, God, please. And like, I try. I don't give people the stink eye, but I sure do want to every time I see it. It really that's just the tip of the iceberg of the things that I see that make me really just soul crushing.
And the corporations that are bottling that water and selling it and commodifying water, and the insult of putting it in plastic on top of that. So it's like, yes, the individual consumer, but also the corporations that we should burn to the ground. But
yes. Yes.
Just
and with that, Maya, casual little sidebar. Yeah, for sure. Maya, I want to turn it over to you because I know you also are very much a client activist. But I first want to bring attention to this. This is your first acting job since moving to Chicago. So first of all, bravo to you and congratulations on that you're starring in the title role of this brand new work. So what drew you to auditioning for Eileen's play? Was it because of the emphasis on climate issues?
So, well, a couple of different things. I think I misexplained this, but technically my first show, I was understudying at Gwydion Theater Company, but I auditioned. The first show I booked was Kassandra at the Top of the World. And then I ended up auditioning for Gwydion after, ending up doing the show right before Kassandra as a swing, but I never went on stage.
Gotcha.
But I did all the swing work. So
gotcha. So you're going to be making your actual standing on stage acting debut with Kassandra.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
What was the question again? Could you repeat the question?
I'm just curious, what drew you to auditioning for the play? Was it because of the climate concern aspect of the piece, or was there something else?
I think I was just having a discussion with one of my peers before auditioning for this show, before seeing the audition posting. And we were talking about this difference between being able to do shows that cover topics that are important and necessary stories to be told versus doing like Footloose. That's not to say that like Footloose isn't is a meaningless story. I mean,
Sure.
I love dancing. You got to cut foot loose.
Mhm.
But
Right.
I've always there's something in me when I moved to Chicago that was like, I want to really make sure I'm finding shows that I'm doing that are covering subjects I believe in. And so when I saw this audition posting, a lot of what drew me to it was about the feminism aspect of it and the climate change. But for me, more it was about women's rights. And I mean, I am a feminist. I'm a climate activist. I'm very political. And I have grown up knowing that the world is going to end. It's very difficult for me to remember a time in my life where I wasn't told that the world is going to burn by the time, like, before I turn 60, and that's a little bit harrowing, and it's become something that's very deeply ingrained in me, is that
Yeah.
knowing there's a bit of futility to the world, and it's because of the corporations. And so I think I became quite radicalized as a kid, and there are so many different efforts I've taken in my life. With when I was younger in high school, I was very much like yelling at my parents, and I was like, "No, you can't do that. The world's gonna end." And then that ended up changing them for the better. All of us had a lot of political conversations when I was in high school, and I feel like I got some work done. But that feels something that's a little bit external to me. Um,
Hmm.
Something that I can control as much as I want. However, it feels as if feminism is a different subject and one and the same. Uh, uh, and so feminism feels like something that feels it's personal. It's personal to me
Mm.
in advocating for my own individualism to combat the ways that I've been oppressed as a woman of color. And when
Mhm.
I saw the posting for the show, that is what drew me to it. And I was really
Mm.
nervous about auditioning too. I was like, I wonder what I could do. And then I had the perfect monologue for it that actually reminds me of the script so much from Christopher Durang. It feels so similar. But it ended up just like working out so well. And I told my friends about the audition, and they were like, that is your show. You need to audition for this. And I was like, I'm nervous. And they were like, you're gonna do it. And then I told them I got a call back, and they were like, you're gonna get it, Maya. And I was like, I don't know. And then I got it. And I was like, oh my gosh. Actually, when I found out that I got the show, my car wasn't working, and it was like broke down on the side of the road in Chicago. And I was like so stressed that I looked down at my phone and I got the email, and I was like, I just booked my first show in Chicago. Yes. So it's like a long story, but anyways, that's why I auditioned for the show.
I mean, and that is how the universe works, you know, like you set your sights on these particular stories you want to tell. You went to the audition. Even your friends knew that this was the show you were going to book.
Yeah.
And then your car is dead on the side of the road, and then you get the email. I mean, it's like a dichotomy of emotions in a span of 5 minutes. Cars dying. My Chicago debut is going to happen. That was a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Eileen, we need to know, when does the show open? When is it running? How do people get tickets? All the important
Yes,
stuff.
absolutely. So we open tomorrow night, April 2nd. Um,
Okay.
and then we run every Wednesday through Saturday through April 18th. So there's 3 weekends. I think it's like what, 11 performances to grab. Um, and it is at Burger Park Cultural Center. So we are partnering with the Park District and also with the Terror-Cattas, which is a incredible company run by Wendy Schmidt, who I've collaborated with in the past, that just supports like experimental new work. And so
Hmm.
they've been just really generous in helping. Fat Theater Project's a young company, and so like having kind of a more established group help us with the producing aspect has been wonderful. So yeah, we sort of have these three entities helping produce the show, and
Great.
tickets are on the Park District website, which can be a little difficult to navigate. So we recommend going to the Terracottas website, where they'll kind of point you in the right direction. Um, all that being said, we're offering 20 pay what you can tickets at the door every night. So you can always just show up and be like, can I come? And we will almost get, but guarantee that we'll be able to get folks in. Um, But yeah,
Wonderful.
regular tickets are $10. Pay what you can at the door. We're also grateful to the Park District for helping us keep those costs low, for everybody to be able to see. And yeah, show starts at
Wonderful.
7:00, and yeah, it's
Every performance is 7:00.
every performance at 7.
As usual, we will post the link to tickets in our show notes here. So if you're listening and you want to get tickets, the quickest and easiest way will probably be through our show notes as well. We'll probably just link it to the Terracottas website. Unless we find an even quicker way to get them, we will add that one as well. Eileen and Maya both, let our listeners know where they can find you on social media. Eileen, we'll stick with you first.
Yeah, I'm kind of Eileen Tull everywhere on social media. I'm lucky to have sort of a strange little Irish name that not a lot of other people have. So yeah, I'm on all the socials, and I'm not really great at social media, but if you like dumb content, I am putting up a lot of dumb content.
Excellent. We love dumb content. We need some levity to distract us from the firestorm that is happening in our world on the daily. So we appreciate your dumb content. And what about you, Maya? Where can people find you on social media?
Yes, you can find me at Maya Harmony. That is at MAYA Harmony on Instagram.
Fantastic. Any parting words for our listeners from either of you before we wrap up?
Yes. If you are acting, keep going. Never stop. You just got to keep pushing through and telling your stories that need to be told. Let your voice be heard.
Yes.
Love that. How about you, Eileen? Any parting words?
Yeah, I think I would say that in our sort of like crazy political, sometimes seeming end of days time, is that all art is valuable. And so and all art is political. So you're telling your story and you're saying it out loud. I think especially if you're a marginalized identity or marginalized community, like the act of that person speaking out loud, insisting upon attention, insisting upon telling a story, is an inherently political act. And I think that there's a lot of value in marching, a lot of value in sending correspondence and bothering our senators and representatives. And I also think art making is those are the tools in my toolbox. And so that's how I can respond to the world.
Wonderful. Thank you both for sharing those thoughts. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys joining us here on the podcast. Best of luck with the run of Kassandra at the Top of the World. I'm going to try and come see it. I'm glad it's running for 3 weeks because it really helps when things have a nice, healthy run rather than just, a couple of shows over a couple weeks span. It gets hard to see everything, but Thursday nights are a good night for me. So I'm going to really try and make it over the next few weeks. Have a great opening. Thank you for joining me here, and have a great run. Thanks for joining us at the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Chicago Theater Makers Podcast is a production of Spirit Art LLC, and our podcast theme music is by Paul Langford. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please drop us a note at our website, ChiTheaterMakersPodcast.com. That's ChiTheater, makers with an S, podcast.com. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us as much as we enjoyed spending it with you, and we'll see you on the board soon.